Welcome to the Regeneration Collective podcast, the next UN Visions for a Regenerative Future. I'm Silke von Brockhausen, a UN insider with 18 years across more than a dozen UN missions and founder of the Regeneration Collective. As the UN approaches its 80th year and the campaign for the next Secretary General gets underway, amid protracted conflicts, widening inequalities, and cross-planetary boundaries, we ask, how can the UN become the platform through which people, institutions, and the more than human world repair and transform broken systems and create conditions where life can thrive? In each episode, we speak with regenerative practitioners, policy shapers, indigenous knowledge holders, peace builders, culture makers, and frontline humanitarians about the lived experiences and visions that could translate into regenerative UN policies, organizational culture, and operations. This is for UN staff, partners, member states, and bridge builders who are curious about what regeneration means in practice and who are ready to turn the UN into a trailblazer for this shift. And today, I'm deeply honored to welcome Alexandra Pimor, an earth lawyer, legal scholar, and social entrepreneur who has spent more than 20 years at the intersection of law, governance, spirituality, and systems change. Alexandra is the director of nature governance at the Earth Law Center, where she leads the Pioneering Nature on the Board project, an effort to expand the rights of nature across legal systems, corporate boards, and decision-making bodies of all kinds. She served as one of the first ever proxies for nature, taking a non-executive director seat at the UK eco-beauty company Faith in Nature, and today continues to mentor a global fellowship of nature proxies through the Dandelion Fellowship. Her work asks a bold question: what if every boardroom, parliament, or UN chamber had a seat for nature, not as a metaphor, but as a voice in decision making? Beyond her role at ELC, Alexandra is the founder of SOA Noya, a consultancy for conscious governance and leadership. She serves as a board member and volunteer for multiple organizations across Europe and has been a contributing author on the rights of nature, including the landmark book Les Droits de la Nature. Alexandra brings a rare combination of legal rigor, systemic facilitation, and deep earth wisdom, making her one of the most exciting voices today in shaping regenerative governance. So without further ado, welcome to the podcast, Alexandra.
Thank you so much, Silke. That was such a beautiful introduction. I'm like, oh my God. Thank you.
It's only a fraction of what you do. I would like to hear from you on definition that I'm asking all of my podcast guests. What does regeneration mean to you, and why is it so relevant today?
This is a very good question because it's a word that is definitely being used a lot by people today. And I like the way that you ask your question because it does have multiple meanings depending on where we are. And for me, regeneration starts always by looking at the word from its etymological roots. And so I like to, sort of like unfold it like a flower. It's got many petals. You've got re, which means again. You've got, the suffix tion, shon, which suggests emotion, which suggests the quality of being an action, an activated dynamic. So for me, it's the dynamics. And then you've got generate, which is to create and to produce. But then when you go even right down, it's, the genus, which is the source, the origin, the genetics, the DNA. So for me, regeneration is very much about renewal. And it's intentional as well, renewal, particularly today, particularly with the practice of being aware and conscious that we need to repair and to restore ourselves and our ecosystem, our planetary ecosystem. So regeneration for me is very much about going back. So the concept of Sankofa, going back to our origins, going right back to what is within us, to what is the source, to what is the very beginning of the meaning of life or the sense of life. And when we look at that source, it's understanding what needs to be repaired, what needs to be restored, what needs to be reciprocated, what needs to be recycled, what needs to be released, and then we can flourish again. So it's very cyclical. It's about the cycle of life.
This is the deepest, clearest explanation I've heard so far of the word, I have to admit. For me, this was just as nature would explain this. So going back to the roots, that gets me to the next question. Can you maybe explain to our listeners also the concept, what it means to have nature on the board? Especially maybe looking at what it could mean in a governance setting like the UN.
So maybe I should go back a little bit to the origin story of Nature on the Board. And as you mentioned before, there's a British company that, to my mind, showed tremendous courage and vision. This organization, this business is called Faith in Nature. And what they said essentially was like, well, if we put our faith in nature in creating all of these, eco beauty products for our customers or our community of customers, then shouldn't nature have a voice? Because, faith in nature relies completely on natural products and natural resources for their products. They felt that it was necessary for nature to be a part of this whole endeavor. And they had on their whiteboard, they had written, nature is the boss. So for them, they were saying, well, nature is literally providing everything for us. And we know that every single business on this planet, directly or indirectly, is totally dependent on Mother Nature, because we are literally on the earth, of the earth, within the earth. We are dependent on all of her bounty and all of her, generosity for us. So for faith in nature to come to that conclusion and to say, we want nature to be seated at the table with us, to make decisions with us, because we don't want to be in a transactional relationship with nature. We're benefiting and we're being taken care of, so we want to take care of nature. So there is this sense of reciprocity as well. Their aim was essentially to ensure that nature would inform the decisions of the board, so that the board could be better informed for ecological decision making. And so Faith in Nature approached the Earth Law Center, which is a US-based NGO that I work with, and also Lawyers for Nature, which is a UK-based NGO. And together with the support of Sherman and Sterling, we went through a feat of creative lawyering, which was looking at, okay, so how do we ensure that nature can have a seat at the table, bearing in mind that we're all coming from rights of nature, from the rights of nature perspectives. And the rights of nature is very much about legislative reforms or constitutional reforms. It's about, jurisprudential and common law advances, legal personhood, for instance, for rivers or mountains. But here we weren't looking at changing the law. We were looking at, okay, so we have a private enterprise who wishes to give nature a seat at the table, and not just a seat, a voice and a vote. So we're talking about individuals through this private enterprise who have chosen to give nature corporate rights, not through a reform in the law, but through the ability within the law to create a space for nature to have a say. So that's the feat of creative lawyering. We didn't change the law. We worked within the system. That's another element of regeneration. You don't have to break things. You just have to go back to the roots and understand, what does it mean? What is the purpose? What is the vision? What is the need? And then you repair what needs to be repaired. You tend to what needs to be tended to. And that's what's happened with Nature on the Board. What we saw was that there was nothing on the UK law that forbade anyone from onboarding nature. What we had to do was also a feat of creating imagination, which means that nature itself so far does not have legal personality or legal rights in the UK. However, we are nature. And on the UK law, the people who can sit on the board are natural persons or legal persons. Well, a natural person is a human being. And a legal person is a legal person that has been granted legal personhood through the will of the laws that natural persons have enacted. So overall, when you take all of this into consideration, to give a human being the responsibility to step in as nature, not just for nature, not just with nature, but as nature too. So that it's not just a relationship that is hierarchical. It's not just like, oh, nature is vulnerable, which we have ecosystems that are definitely vulnerable, but it's not just about nature. I know better. I'm going to take care of you. It's like I'm stepping in as nature. So we are stepping in as an embodiment of nature and in partnership with nature as well. So that's what nature on the board is. It's a feat of creative lawyering and of, creative imagination so that we can speak as the voice of nature. And so what we have demonstrated is that we can formally bring nature on a board. Nature can have entrenched corporate rights, institutional rights on those boards and can speak. And then we also have made sure that human beings who are members of an inherently anthropological institutional organization are the ones who can speak, because we are the bridge as well for all of the other voices. So when we talk about the voice of nature, it is plural. And when we say that we step as nature, we step as one voice of nature. With Bronte Ansell from Lawyers for Nature, the two of us were the very first two nature proxies to step on that board. Two women as well, which I have to say is kind of cool, because it's like it's breaking the barriers of so many, usually unheard voices. And then with nature on the board, the first thing that we did was to observe and listen and really dig deep into what it means to bring nature in a governance system, in a governance structure. What kind of culture do we want to cultivate? And for the UN, what it would mean is that the people at the heart of those systems, the UN is a fiction. It was created by human beings from scratch, which means that it might have its statutes and its constitution, but even that is dynamic and organic and can change and has to change according to evolution. Because if we don't change, it's like saying to a child who's wearing a pair of shoes, well, this is your pair of shoes, that's it. And then the child, 5 years later can't fit into those shoes. It's our society. You see what I mean? We evolve. So if the constitution is like a shoe, the constitution also has to actually expand. If it's like a house and the family grows, the family has, the house has to expand, or we have to look at what else needs to be added. So we have to actually get into this growth mindset. And for the UN, I think it's high time, because the UN was, founded for peace. The whole point was it is about peace. It is about cooperation between all of the nations. It was a recognition, and it is still a recognition, that we are all interconnected and that what happens in one country affects another country, and we can see it today. So what happens all across the globe, ecologically speaking, is a matter for the UN. As far as I'm concerned, that's true. Whatever the words were written in the constitutions, they can either be reinterpreted, so we work within the system, or they may be amended, and that's more of a reform. So there are the two sort of like different pathways here.
This is brilliant. And I love that you also referred already to the fact that we are nature, right? Technically, we could all be the voice of nature, but why are we not is one of the questions I have. And then also, how is it to embody this nature voice? And what do you think people need to be able to speak on behalf of nature? Because if we are all nature, then it should come very natural to us. But for some reason we don't. If you can unpack this a little bit.
Yeah, this is definitely something that I have been pondering about for many, many years, and have had several conversations with different people. And in particular, I find a great deal of inspiration and like-mindedness with different indigenous traditions, or ancestral traditions as well. I'm mixed race. I'm part French and part Malagasy. So I was born in Madagascar, I grew up in France, and I became an adult in the UK. So I've got this really, for me, I've always felt that I'm a citizen of the world.
Mm.
And I was raised by my mother, who was Malagasy. And whilst I was raised in a European context, educated in a French context, I was raised as a Catholic as well. So there was all of this very, what I would term Western culture that is very much embedded in me. I mean, from my French side, we have traced a genealogical tree up to the 14th century, when the first, Pimor sort of like arrived on French territory. So I have this legacy and this tradition, which is very European, and I have my Malagasy African culture as well. And in Madagascar, I'm part of a tribe that is called the Betimsark. And within the Betimsarks, there is a very deep connection to the ancestors. There is a whole cosmology about the relationship between the heavens and the earth, and the covenant between the gods of the heavens and you know, the goddess of the earth, and how the human beings are the offsprings of that dance. And our ancestors are a continuation. Like, I'm not here just on my own steam. I am the manifested dreams of my ancestors. I am their living legacy, and so are my children. I am part of this line. That's how I look at things. So for me, this is where it begins. When we say we need to understand who we mean. And in the Western world, we have had this broken line with our ancestors, and that broken line with nature. And the reason why we don't really feel or think that we are nature is because we have been embedded in a Cartesian and Darwinist culture of separation and of dominion and of, you know, supremacy and of hierarchy, that human beings are exceptional beings, that we are the pinnacle and the be all, which we are not. We are a keystone species, and we are important, and we certainly have a massive impact on the balance of this earth. And we need to understand that we are a nuance, a voice, a blade of grass of nature. So when I speak as nature, and when I bring the concept of nature on the board, so nature on the board is more of a framework, but the purpose of nature on the board is the practice of nature consciousness. And for me, nature consciousness is the reintegration that we are nature. We are not outside of nature because we are within nature. We were born of the earth. We were literally made of the earth, and we were made of the cosmos. We are made of, is it 70% of water, which is an element of life. We breathe the same air that our ancestors have breathed, like the same air that literally was created from the beginning of this planet's existence. Our skin and everything that we eat comes of the earth, and everything that we are is shed. You know, how many elements of our skin do we shed on this earth? We are all interconnected. We are all kin within that space. And that's how I step in. My center point as a voice of nature is kinship. It's relationality. It's reciprocity. It's my understanding that I am an expression and a voice of nature. I also connect and converse with many different voices of nature, whether it is human, whether it is non-human. Thomas Berry, who is, and he would call himself a geologian. So he was a theologian, and he was very much, he's basically the grandfather or the godfather of earth law. And he spoke about the great conversation, that human beings have stepped out of the great conversation, but we used to really simply be in balance and in harmony and in connection with the elements of the earth, until we decided that we are actually above the earth. But we're not. We're absolutely not. So for a human being, and right now it is human beings because we are inherently anthropological in our culture, in our practices, in the way that we create our institutions. So we need human beings to be the voice piece, not just of the human nature of existence, also about the more than human, the other than human, which again, even that expression feels very anthropocentric. For a human being to step in as a voice of nature, the first thing that I would suggest is that there is an inner work that has to be done. And work, capital U. It is the sacred work. That's how I call it, because it goes beyond any construct that we can create for ourselves. And it's reintegrating the natural laws of this planet as well. So it's a case of, in my mind, it's understanding that we are nature through relationality. It's understanding as well that we are nature through empathy. and through compassion. Any one of us can be a voice of nature. It isn't, as far as I'm concerned, it isn't first about, technical expertise or professional qualifications, or these are not even found in the rest of nature. These are fictions that we have created for ourselves as human beings. When you really look at the natural elements of nature, it starts from the heart. It's always about love, and it's about peaceful being, and peaceful beings that we evolve in harmony with each other. So we have to have a desire to be peace, and therefore to practice peace, and to promote and to foster and to exude peaceful intentions, peaceful means. And so for the UN, this is exactly what the UN was actually created for: peace. And Antonio Guterres did say that humanity is at war with nature. That means humanity is at war with itself. So it starts from within. There is an inner work to be done. Start from looking at who am I and who do I choose to be? Because it doesn't matter that you say, I want peace. If everything in your behavior is not peaceful, you are not practicing peace. Peace is not the destination. It's not a singular state of being. It is a practice. And it is a relational practice.
Alexandra, I love all of this. And I wholeheartedly agree that it starts with this inner work. And I see so many of my colleagues with beautiful intentions, but being stressed, burned out, under so much pressure, under so much fear. And right now, the system is in a huge crisis, funding crisis, restructuring is happening everywhere. Everybody is shaken up. And how are you supposed, as a human being, as a UN staff member, to then bring peace and assistance, support to others if you haven't given it to yourself, and if the environment you work in doesn't provide for this, because it's all a not supportive container of this inner work, in a sense? But when I go to colleagues and I talk about regeneration and about this inner work and that we are nature, they all put me into the category of hippie or tree hugger, or that I'm an environmentalist, or that it's all about the environment and climate change. But I think you already alluded to it so beautifully, that it's really much more. And it shouldn't be then the work of the environmental department in an organization or UNEP or so, what you're doing. What I support to have this voice of nature inside the UN. It should really be a practice that all of us are doing. But can you give us some concrete tips how we could instill something like this into our organizational culture? Have you experienced from other organizations where there might have been also internal resistance, how to maybe encourage an organization and staff to embrace this and not see it as like a hippie movement that's taking place?
Well, first of all, I actually think it's quite a compliment to actually be called a hippie. I'm a lawyer. Yeah. So I'm a lawyer and I'm a legal scholar, and I spent 20 years in academia, and I was in a law school, and I was called, a hippie, and it used to really baffle me. I was also called an idealist. And at first I was just like, it felt like it was almost an accusation, until I realized that it didn't matter if it was an accusation. It's the truth. I don't know what a hippie actually is supposed to be, but if a hippie and a tree hugger means that I love my environment, then it's true. If being an idealist means that I actually have ideas, and therefore I have ideals about what the world should be, that is absolutely true. And here's the thing: everything that is created on this planet from a human perspective comes from the world of ideas and the world of ideals. Plato talked about it. So it's the world of this imaginative, imagination is the nation of images. It's the nation of what we wish to create. We fly in the sky nowadays, and the very first people who actually even imagined flying in the sky were ridiculed because, you're crazy. And look at that. We're talking across this screen. The people, people who imagined this, that was science fiction, 50, 60 years ago. That was science fiction. And for some people, it's like, it's crazy. It's never going to happen. So where does it begin? It begins in you, in your imagination, with your ideas. It's a cultural evolution. That's what it is. So it's not, there is an obsession in our current society for hardcore impact measurement. This is my little thing at the minute because we're being asked, what's the evidence? What's the impact?
At the UN.
Right? And you're like, you're focusing on the fruits. You're literally asking a tree, where are the fruits? Where are the fruits? Does a tree always produce fruits all the way throughout the year? No. There are cycles. Before the fruits even appear, what is there? There has to be a work that is being done at the root level. And my expression is that the quality of the fruits depend on the quality of the roots. If you do not take care of the roots, you will see that the fruits will reflect that. So what we are first having to do is to take care of our roots. This is where regeneration comes in. We have to look at the roots of who we are. We cannot keep on expecting different results if we are not actually willing to change what needs to change at the root level. If we always do what we've always done, we will always get what we always got. So when you say that you speak to your colleagues and they're like, oh yeah, but that's an environmental question. That's the separation mentality, thinking that the environment is something that is outside of us. It isn't. We are the environment. And actually, our entire being, our own personal being, is an environment. What are we made of? We're made of living cells. When you look at what each of our cells do within our body to keep us alive, to keep us healthy, these are living cells. Did you ever watch like Once Upon a Time Life?
Oh, where they go inside the body or something? Yeah.
And you see how like how the red cells and the white cells actually, like how everything works within you. Understanding how everything functions to take care of your immune system, for instance. We are a microcosm of the Earth operating ecosystem. This means that taking care of ourselves means that we're taking care of the Earth.
Wow.
In the Lakota tradition, for instance, like we've just gone through the solstice, where we've moved from the summer into the autumn. So here's the thing. During that time, we're supposed to rest. Because when we rest, the Earth also gets to rest. When we take care of ourselves, the Earth gets to take care of itself or herself. Mm-hmm. It's also based on the concept of reciprocity or solidarity or Ubuntu. I am because you are. I am because we are. We are because I am. We are interconnected, interrelated, interdependent. When we take care of our own self, when we regenerate from within, we automatically step into the world in a much more regenerative being, which means that we can be of service, not of servitude, but of service. As a parent, if I don't take care of myself, how can I take care of my child? If I don't take care of my mental health, of my emotional health, how can I help them? How can I be present for them? How can I hear their heart, their soul, bearing themselves to me? How can I step into work and be of service to the purpose and to the team? So what I would say is this: we are together the environment. We are faced with different conditions, and one of those conditions is how we feel about ourselves. When you wake up in the morning and you're feeling rough, if you don't tend to yourself, what's going to happen next? You're going to step outside. You're going to be rough with your neighbors. You're going to be rough with the people on the road. You're going to be rough when you get to work. And what does it create? It creates conditions that then means that there's strife, and then it creates an environment where there is just more strife and it becomes normalized. Yeah. Whereas if you wake up in the morning and you realize that you're feeling rough, something is wrong, and you take a moment to look after yourself, to look at yourself, breathe in, breathe out, listen, and give yourself the grace that you need in that moment. Was it a bad dream? Or is this that I'm just feeling the energies around me of the world that is sad? Or is this that I'm nervous about something that's going to happen? Whatever it is, feel the energy, which is the energy in motion, the emotion, give yourself what you need in that moment, and then choose. Choose how you want to be, how you want to feel. That is conscious governance, because governance is about regulation. It's self-regulation. We regulate the conditions of our environment. So when you give yourself what you need, you're self-regulating yourself. If I want to be at peace today, if I choose to be at peace, then I'm going to ask myself, what is the first thing that I need to do? I need to give myself peace. I will do something that makes me feel happy and that gives me peace. And then I will step into the world and I will spread this.
This is, yeah.
So I'm just going to say the UN works very well with the Sustainable Development Goals. It has to work with the inner development goals as well. It has to, the people within the UN are what makes the UN what it is. The UN is the sort of like the super ego or the super personality. The people are the system. The people tend to the system. We are not, the system was not created for us to fit in the system. The system is created to fit our needs. So we have to tend to our needs. Individual, collective, organizational, systemic.
Beautifully said. In the UN feel it really means that concepts like staff well-being and mental health support, etc., should really be one of the central management priorities, because without this healthy soil that we could be, we're not going to be able to create a healthy planet, a healthy environment around us, and create a better future for the generations coming after us as well. So what would you actually do if you, as voice of nature, as embodiment of nature, if you would become the Secretary General on the 1st of January 2027? What would your first 100 days look like? What kind of policies would you start implementing as nature?
What an incredible question. My understanding of the role of the Secretary General is to set the tone. It's to lead by example. It's to be a role model. And therefore, to be a role model means that you have to model what you propose to be or to become. So in that role, I would integrate nature consciousness. That would be my very first act, simply because for me, that's the baseline. That's the regenerative baseline. There's a book that I would strongly recommend everybody to read, which is Ishmael by Daniel Quinn. And in Ishmael, we have an understanding of what the mother culture is. And the mother culture is not something that we can touch or that we even think about, but it's our assumptions about what the world is and how we got to be where we are today. And the mother culture that has transported us to where we are right now is a mother culture of separation. It's a paradigm of separation. It's a paradigm of dominance. And that's the paradigm that needs to be addressed now. And so as Secretary General, I would expect to change the root level, the conditions of the roots, which is the paradigm in which we are. We are not separate from nature. We are nature. Therefore, we need to become a beneficent, active, responsible, and conscious member of that community of life. And that would be the role of the Secretary General, to embody it, and therefore not to just speak on behalf of nation states or nations, but it would be also to speak on behalf of the state of the earth, the global planetary nation that we are. And it would be about repositioning all the questions that we ask ourselves, all the situations in which we find ourselves from this ecocentric perspective or eco-focused perspective, from an ecological regenerative route. That would be the first thing. So anything that would come through afterwards in terms of policies would have, to my mind, would have to be reframed from that perspective. Because nature is about life and the UN is about peace. And if we are about, making sure that we live a peaceful, healthy, wealthy life on this earth, how do we reframe all of our policies from a perspective of life, regenerative and sustain, and that's what I would go for. So I would say bringing the voice of nature means bringing the voices of nature, and the Secretary General obviously is here to, is just not just, but it's It's the main role model, and it's literally sort of like the guardian of such a huge community of human beings. Everybody in that community wants the same thing. We want a healthy life. We want to live peacefully. We want to live well. We want our families to be able to grow and to thrive, right? So it's really calling on those very essential elements to inspire those policies, and not on the fictitious economic numbers and metrics and so on. Let's get back to basics, and let's use then all of the other tools to make sure that our systems work for us, for the thriving of life as a whole. So the Secretary General would be kind of like the head voice of nature, supported by so many different voices of nature who would be able to come up with all of their wisdom in that space. And the other thing that I would definitely do is ensure that we have more indigenous representation, because indigenous elders, ancestral and traditional, wisdom bearers, they have an unbroken line of connection, of understanding, of conversation with the whole of the earth, with nature as a whole. So I would say that we would also need to have a wisdom council within the UN.
We have this Indigenous People Forum in the UN, and I feel it's mainly about the rights of Indigenous people. But for me, it would be really about turning it into this advisory council and learning from this wisdom, and not just protecting, which is obviously also super important, but much more taking these voices so serious. And you gave this beautiful explanation of the unbroken line of connection to nature.
Yes. And with what you've just said, here's the thing, the protection of indigenous rights actually would be even more enhanced if indigenous wisdom is given its rightful place in that space. We need to actually, it's the concept of Sankofa. We need to go back to our roots in order to face forward, to regenerate a future that is worth living. So indigenous, ancestral, and traditional wisdom bearers need to be at the heart of these spaces. And by that, I mean that we are all indigenous to the earth, but some of us have got this unbroken line of place-based indigeneity. And we need to be able to really reconnect with that, because this is the legacy of the entire planet. Our future rests on that, on this repository of wisdom bearers. We need to learn. And we need to
And then
evolve
if
in that
we
space.
do learn, and if we do, this was incredible, Alexandra. It was such a beautiful, deep, rich conversation. And I personally could listen to you forever. And I'm sure that a lot of our listeners feel the same, or would like to learn more from you, hear from you, maybe connect with you. How can they reach out, engage with you or your organizations that you work with?
Well, you can have a look at our website, which is the earthlaw.org website. So the Earth Law Center, and we have several programs. And so the one that I lead is the Nature Governance Agency. And I want to clarify as well that nature governance, it's not about, governing nature. It's really nature conscious governance. We are reintegrating the consciousness of nature within our governance system. So you can reach out to us via the website, via LinkedIn. You can reach out to me via LinkedIn or email, and it depends on what you have in mind. We have the Dandelion Fellowship, which is a course that invites human beings to step into their voices, so their own voice of nature. And so that program, the first level of that program is about the being. So we're not human doings, we're human beings. So we step into that space in order to be humans and understand what is the nature of being human, so that we can be a voice of nature. So that's Dandelion Fellowship. We also have a Sodality, which is a program for organizations and businesses who want to onboard nature, and we support that journey of integrity where we align our thoughts, our words, and our actions, our deeds, to onboard nature in a formal way. So nature's advisor, nature's director, nature's inspiration, nature's shareholder. There are different ways that this can happen. In the UN, for instance, that would be nature's advisor, or as an observer, potentially as well. So these are some of the elements that we can offer. And there is so much more.
I love this, and all the best for your mission. And thank you so much for spending all your time and wisdom, energy today on this podcast. Thank you.
Thank you so, so much for having me. That was a beautiful conversation. I really, really enjoyed it. Thank you.